Hey guys, it's Miss Johnson and I'm here to bring you our Notes 6 for Unit 3. Today we're talking about finding the probability of at least one event happening. So our steps for finding the probability of at least one are listed right here on this first slide. You find the probability of one event of the thing happening. Then you take the complement of that, and if you remember back from our first lesson, the complement probability is taking 1 minus that probability. Then you take 1 minus that step 2 answer again and raise it to the n power, where n is the total number of draws or total number of times that the event is happening. So we're going to go through this process several times today together, and so that you can get a handle on what's happening here. So in example 1, it says calculate the following probability. 5 people have all have their own jar that contains 6 red marbles, 5 blue marbles, and 3 green marbles. They each draw 1 marble. What is the probability that at least one person draws a red marble? So what I want to do is recognize first of all that 5 is going to be my n, because there's 5 people that are going to perform this event here. Then I need to find the probability of the red marble. I know that there are 6 plus 5 plus 3 total, which is 14 total, and that there are 6 that are red. So for step 1, the probability of drawing a red marble, that is equal to 6 out of 14. 6 out of 14 is the same thing as 3/7. It's helpful to reduce the fractions here when you have them, because you're going to take the complement of that and it's a little bit easier if you have it reduced. So then the step 2, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the complement of that. So 1 minus the 3/7 is equal to 4/7. And if you can think back to our fraction knowledge, 1 is the same thing as 7/7. Because any number divided by itself is equal to 1. So if I have 7/7 minus 3/7, you subtract the numerators. 7 minus 3 gives me 4. So that's where I got that 4/7. Then the last step is to take this thing, this complement that we just found, and we're going to raise it, take 1 minus that. But we need to take that 4/7 and we need to raise it to the n power. So 1 minus 4/7 raised to the n power. I type all that into my calculator, and you can type it all in at one time. You just want to make sure that you put parentheses around that 4/7. You only want the 4/7 raised to the 5th, and if you don't put parentheses around the 4/7, it may only raise the 7 or the 4, depending on where you put it in. So type it in as exactly how you see it right here. 1 minus, open a parenthesis, 4 divided by 7, close a parenthesis. Use that caret key for your powers and raise it to the 5th power. When I do that, you should get a decimal that looks like 0.93907, and it goes on. And remember, for probability, we round to the 3rd place, so that's 0.939. So there's a 0.939 chance that at least one person will draw a red marble. Let's take a look at another one. 4 people each have their own deck of cards. Each person draws 1 card from the deck. What is the probability that at least one person draws an ace? So I know here that my n is going to equal a 4. I know that I have 4 aces, and I know that I have 52 cards in each deck. So step 1 is to find that probability. The probability of drawing an ace is equal to 4 out of 52. Which is the same thing as 1 out of 13 when I reduce that fraction. Then the next thing I would do is I'd take 1 minus that probability. So 1 minus 1 out of 13 is equal to 12 out of 13. Then the last step, I do 1 minus again, 1 minus 12 out of 13, and I raise that to the 4th power. So I have 1 minus that complement raised to the 4th power. I get a decimal there of 0.27397, and so on. The 9 tells my 3 that I need to go up, so 0.274 is my probability there. Let's try the next one. 2 people roll a pair of dice. What is the probability that at least one rolls a 10? There are 3 ways to get a 10. You can have a 4 and a 6, a 5 and a 5, and a 6 and a 4. Those are your 3 ways to get a 10. Remember that when you roll a pair of dice, it's 6 times 6 options, which is 36. Your n here is 2. All right, so let's give it a try. Step 1, the probability of rolling a 10 is 3 out of 36, which is the same thing as 1 out of 12. And again, the only reason I'm reducing those fractions is to make it a little bit easier when I find this complement. So in step 2, find the complement, 1 out of 12, which is equal to 11 twelfths. Step 3, I need to take 1 minus that complement. I need to put parentheses around that and raise it to the n power, which is 2. When I do that, I get a decimal of 0.15972, and that 7 is going to tell my 9 to go up, which is going to make this a 60, so it's 0.160. I want to pause for a second and just make a mention of why I keep these things in decimal version. When you take 1 divided by 12 and put it into your calculator, you could get a decimal version of that, but it's going to be a repeating decimal. And at some point, if you use the decimal version, at some point you're going to have to cut off your digits, and you don't want to do that. You lose accuracy if you round. So the only time you want to round is at the end for the answer. Okay, so that's just one thing. So that's going to be really important here. You want to keep using the fractions. Use the fractions for all of these calculations. If you start using the decimal version, especially if I go back here and look at this one where it was the 3/7, 4 divided by 7 or 3 divided by 7, even if I round it up here with the 3/7, that decimal is a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal. That decimal is going to go on and on and on and on. So at some point, you're going to have to round it and cut it off. You lose accuracy because then you're going to take that rounded decimal and raise the rounded decimal to the 5th power. You lose a lot of accuracy when you do that. So keep your fraction version so that you don't lose the accuracy as you go through this. The only time that you want to round is at the very end, just to get your answer, just to write down your answer. Okay, let's try a couple more here. We're going to do just a couple more. So in example 4, I have 3 people have their own jar containing 2 red, 3 blue, and 5 green. So 3, that's my N. 2, 3, and 5, I have 10 total marbles. What is the probability that at least one person draws a blue? Blue is 3 out of 10. Notice that I'm highlighting this phrase where it says at least one. That's going to be something that you need to pay attention to when it comes to your test, because not all probabilities ask for at least one. When it asks for at least one, that's when you have to go through this process. So the probability of getting a blue is 3 out of 10. Take the complement of that. So 1 minus 3 out of 10 is equal to 7 out of 10. And then take the complement of that and raise it to the 3rd power. So 1 minus 7 out of 10 raised to the 3rd power gives me 0.657 for probability there. Well, a lot of people get tripped up in this process a little bit because they forget that you have to do the 1 minus twice. There's 1 minus to get the complement, and then it's a 1 minus the complement again raised to the power. So make sure that you're doing 1 minus 2 times. Okay, that's one thing that people forget a lot when they're doing these. Let's try a couple more. So 9 people each have their own deck of cards. Each person draws 1 card. What's the probability of at least one drawing a club? So the probability of a club is equal to 13 out of 52, which is the same thing as 1 out of 4. So then I take 1 minus the 1/4 and I get 3/4. And then I take 1 minus the 3/4, put that in parentheses, and raise it to the 9th power. So 1 minus 3/4 raised to the 9th power, 0.92491, and so on and so forth. I highly advise you to try and type one of these calculations into your calculator while I'm going through these, just so that you can see if you're typing it in the correct way. So I know I'm going through these examples really fast and probably not giving you time to actually type them into your calculator yourself, but remember that when you're watching a lesson video, you can go ahead and pause it or rewind it anytime you need to. Try typing one of these into your calculator to make sure that you're typing it in the right way and you get the same answer I do. Okay, last time we're going to do this one more time. So 6 people each roll a pair of dice. So I'm back at 36 options because a pair of dice. What is the probability that at least one rolls a 7? And there are 6 different ways to get a 7. And remember, when they say rolls a 7, that means they want a sum of 7. So there's 6 ways to get a 7. So my first step is find the probability of a 7. And I'm going to get 6 out of 36 there, which is 1 out of 6. 6 out of 36 is the same thing as 1 out of 6. So if I take the second step of the complement, I have 1 out of 6, or sorry, 1 minus 1 out of 6, which is 5/6. And then the third step of taking that 1 minus again, and take that 5/6 and raise it to your n power, which is 6. So 1 minus 5/6 raised to the 6th power is 0.665 when I round it to the third decimal place. So hopefully that gives you a little picture of what we do to find that probability of at least one person or thing happening. I went through a bunch of examples. It was pretty quick, but if you remember that you can rewind it or listen to it as many times as you need to. And if you have questions, I'm happy to address them the next time we meet. Have a great day and thanks for listening. This one.